Thank you, Kevin, for the introduction. That was the perfect lead into sharing the human clinical trial we are conducting at the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine here in Spokane. In my presentation, I will dive deep into one of our projects within the Soil to Society pipeline. It's a clinical trial to determine the human health impacts of high fiber barley. My talk is titled Biofortification as a tool to tackle malnutrition experimentation in barley, because I'm going to describe how plant breeders have joined the effort to address the ever complex issue of tackling malnutrition. Recent scholarship proposes the new nutrition reality is the coexistence of multiple forms of malnutrition. Populations are increasingly facing both undernutrition, for example, micronutrient deficiencies, and overnutrition, such as overweight and obesity. This is known as the double burden of malnutrition. Experts realize tackling this complex problem will require multiple tools and approaches, and plant breeders are proving that biofortification is one of those tools. So here it is in our toolbox. What is biofortification? In the 1990s, in an aim to address malnutrition in target countries, plant breeders and agronomists began developing crops with increased nutritional content. So biofortification has been implemented to address poor quality diets due to a lack of micronutrients and quality protein, the diminished nutrient content of modern crop cultivars, which Dr. Murphy covered in his presentation, and rural populations' limited access to fortified foods and supplements. The Codex Alimentarius Commission proposed a definition for biofortification in 2018, following a lot of debate over the use of the term. So biofortification has been in practice for several decades, and only now are they coming up with a general definition for it, and it's really useful. So the Codex's definition is that biofortification is any process other than conventional addition to food whereby nutrient content is increased or becomes more bioavailable in all potential food sources for the intended nutritional purposes. And I've given examples for the different elements of this definition. So any process might be plant breeding, agronomic practices, such as foliar fertilization of crops. The conventional addition to food is likely food fortification. And the nutrient content might be minerals, might be fiber, might be increased amino acids. The potential food sources could be the whole grain, the whole legume, might be the derivatives of these crops like bread products. And the nutritional purpose, is it glycemic control, reducing the prevalence of anemia in a population? So it's a three-step process for a successful biofortification program. You have to start with successful breeding, right? So the crop has to have high nutrient density, high yields, high profitability, so a farmer can be successful in growing this. You have to demonstrate efficacy of the biofortified crop. You have to prove there's an improvement in the human health status. You have to demonstrate effectiveness of the biofortified crop. Crop varieties must be adopted by the farmers and consumed by those suffering from malnutrition. In this slide, you can see two different photos, and it alludes to where we are in the biofortification program for barley. So we have been successful in breeding a nutrient-dense barley variety with high yields, as Dr. Murphy described in his presentation. And right now, we're demonstrating efficacy in a human clinical trial. Barley, I'd love to say that it is the ideal biofortification candidate, and it's because of the soluble fiber called beta-glucan. Research has shown that beta-glucan decreases cholesterol, slows glucose absorption, decreases hunger, reduces how much you eat at your next meal. This sounds like something like a food that everyone needs. Quinoa is a superfood. I would say barley is most definitely a superfood. Is barley the only source of beta-glucan? No, it's present in oats and some seaweeds. However, barley can contain the highest amounts of beta-glucan in plants. So in case you're having difficulty remembering what barley is, in case it's not a common part of your diet, it does have its place in every meal. So here are examples of breakfast items, from whole grain to more processed products. There's lots of lunch options, grain bowls and breads, summer rolls. And dinner might be more familiar with barley. It can also be a great substitute for rice. So let's jump back into what beta-glucan is now that I've familiarized you with barley. Beta-glucan is a soluble fiber, meaning it's dissolved, liquefied in the aqueous enzyme solutions and slurries present in the human system. Whereas insoluble fibers do not absorb or dissolve in water. They pass through our digestive system close to its original form. It's this gel formation by the soluble fiber in the intestine that can reduce the digestibility of starches and glucose uptake, elicit gastric distension, increase fecal transit time, delaying gastric emptying. The research exploring these mechanisms and human health impacts have led to the heart-healthy claims that you see on some food products. So does this heart-shaped claim look familiar? In the fine print, it says that 3 grams of soluble fiber from oatmeal daily in a diet low in saturated fat and cholesterol may reduce the risk of heart disease. That's an incredible claim to have. Then I've underlined this. It says that the cereal has 2 grams per serving. So doesn't this build the perfect case to have a grain variety that is higher in soluble fibers that you don't have to eat, so you can eat just 1 serving, not 1.5 servings? So let's talk even more about why we need more dietary fiber. Dietary fiber, shockingly, is considered a nutrient of concern. The gap between dietary fiber recommendations and intakes is so extreme that the US Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee listed dietary fiber as one of 5 nutrients of concern. Now, knowing that we are likely low in dietary fiber, and we've identified that barley is indeed a superfood, and we choose to go to the grocery store to buy some of that barley, which barley do you buy? You're probably going to be faced with several options. And not all barley varieties are created equal. When you're at the grocery store, you're going to see pearl barleys and hulless barleys. And Kevin talked about this. The pearl barley is a polished grain, so it's very similar to a white rice. It's been through a mechanized polishing process. And the varieties that end up being polished are those that were first bred and then produced for animal feed or for malting, but they just didn't meet the requirements for those industries, or there's maybe overproduction. So they ended up being polished, pearled, and in the grocery store shelves. Whereas the hulless barleys are a whole grain. They are typically high in beta-glucan, and they are bred for human food consumption. There's a difference in nutritional quality, and this table demonstrates that. So it's showing 4 different varieties. One I just pulled off the shelf, and it looks like your typical rounded white pearl barley, whereas the other 3 look a lot different if you were to see them in the bulk bins in the grocery store. And that's because they didn't go through the pearling process. They're going to look like a full whole grain. However, once you're now picking between the hulless varieties and you want to go for the highest beta-glucan variety, it's going to be hard to differentiate. And so looking at this range of 3.7% beta-glucan all the way to 10% beta-glucan, and we know what beta-glucan can do for us, and you're choosing to eat carbs, wouldn't you want the most nutritious option? We also can't forget a really important trait. So that is flavor. So you can breed for many traits, and you want to have a variety that tastes good. Do you remember the 3 steps to a successful biofortification program? Step 1 being the variety must be not just nutrient dense, but it also has to be profitable for the farmer. And that means that it should be high yielding, but also people must like it. People must continue to buy this grain. And so this image is of a Facebook post demonstrating how chefs across the US are excited about one of the high beta-glucan barley varieties. This is exactly what a biofortification program needs. We need chefs as advocates. So I have some questions for the audience, since you're all probably getting a bit bored sitting in your chair listening to me. And I like to dive into these types of questions before I go into the description of the clinical trial. So one being, we can breed these nutritious barleys, but will people eat them? You can't change the nutritional status of a population through a variety that no one eats. would you eat them? And in what form? Think back to those images of barley products. Would you eat them as a breakfast bar, as a grain bowl for dinner? And then the final question is, would you eat it if your doctor prescribed it? And if we were to go as far as saying that one could prescribe an amount of barley to address, say, obesity or predisposition to diabetes, then we should probably understand the dose-response relationships between barley beta-glucan and glycemic control and appetite. And that's what we intend to do. So we have the trial that's called Human Health from Soil to Society, Barley Beta-Glucan, Glycemic Control and Appetite. And this really demonstrates the collaboration that's occurring. We have professors from the Crop and Soil Sciences Department at our College of Agriculture, and then professors from the College of Medicine, and even a research associate at the USDA ARS's Western Wheat Quality Lab. So with this study, our objective is to characterize the health-related effects of 3 high-fiber barley varieties. And our sub-objectives are to determine the dose-response relationship between barley beta-glucan and glycemic control, and a dose-response relationship between barley beta-glucan and appetite and subsequent intake. And to do that, we decided to use a randomized crossover design, and the crossover design requires subjects to undergo different given sequences of the treatment. So each subject gets each of the barley varieties and the control. It allows us to have fewer human subjects. The crossover design is also ideal for the study because each subject then acts as their own control, and the between subject variation can be eliminated. So what are the subjects eating? So these are our test conditions. We have a table here showing our test conditions. We made sure that each porridge was equal volume and equal calorie. The caloric values for each variety were determined using a BOM calorimeter. We also measured beta-glucan, total dietary fiber, and protein to verify the nutritional differences between these varieties. And you can see the range here. If you focus on the lowest line of the table, you'll see our control has 0 beta-glucan, and then Havener has 7%, Megsong 8%, and Sustagrain is 10%. So we're really trying to capture a range. We began recruiting for this trial in the fall of 2019 and started running participants in November. Unfortunately, this trial has been postponed due to the pandemic, but will resume once we are able. All of us on this project are excited to see this collaboration between the colleges succeed. It is truly unique to have barleys that were bred to grow here in Eastern Washington, be more nutrient dense, then be grown by Eastern Washington growers, and then trialed on a subsample of our Eastern Washington population. Ideally, this is the first of many collaborative projects between the colleges of medicine and agriculture. And I'll leave you with my contact information here. You can email me. I also recommend that you check out our lab's website, where you can learn about other research that is ongoing, also publications that we might have, and other students that you might want to reach out to because you might be interested in their projects. And finally, these are the references to support what I've been saying in my presentation. And thank you everyone for listening to both Kevin and I talk about the projects that we're really excited about. Thank you so much.